Alcatraz Island, or the Rock as it's commonly referred to as, is located out in the middle of the San Francisco Bay where it is only possible to access by boat. During my trip to Alcatraz, I learned that the Rock has a rich history of different backgrounds that occupied Alcatraz, notorious inmates, and one of the most violent escapes in 1946. Many people only know Alcatraz because of the prison, but it has so much history before it became the federal penitentiary that everyone knows in 1934. Around 1796, Alcatraz was used by indigenous people where it was mostly a camping spot, an area for gathering food, and even a place of banishment for tribal members who violated tribal law. While many indigenous people were coming and going from the Rock, once the Civil War broke out, it became the largest American fort west of the Mississippi River and was also home of the first lighthouse on the West Coast. During the Civil War, the Army began sending convicted soldiers to Alcatraz, and the island started to become less of a fort and more of a prison. The Army prison lasted until 1934, when the Army allowed the switch for it to become a United States prison. Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary was a maximum security, minimum privilege federal penitentiary from 1934 until 1964. And it housed many notorious and famous inmates that broke rules in other prisons. During its time from 1933 until 1964, it housed over 1,576 men during the 3 decades, which included Al Capone, George Machine Gun Kelly, Robert Birdman Stroud, and even Alvin Karpis, public enemy number 1. While many of these notorious inmates were housed at Alcatraz, there were several escape attempts. At least 36 prisoners were involved in 14 separate attempts, with 23 men caught, 6 shot and killed, and 2 drowned. There are still 5 inmates that are still considered fugitives because they've never been found, but there are odds that they have drowned in the bay and their bodies have never washed ashore. One of the most violent escape attempts on Alcatraz occurred in May of 1946. Many historians mark this date as the most significant event in the island's 29-year history as a federal penitentiary and was appropriately called the Battle of Alcatraz. In the wake of that conflict, 14 guards and 1 inmate were left injured, while 2 correctional officers and 3 inmates lay dead from bullet wounds. During the Battle of Alcatraz, the National Guard was even called in due to the lack of resources and assistance that they needed. In 1964, Robert Kennedy ruled the closing of Alcatraz due to the rising cost and deteriorating facilities. Alcatraz was the most expensive penitentiary to run due to it being an island and everything had to be shipped to the facility. After the closing of the penitentiary, the island was abandoned until 1969. In 1969, Alcatraz made big news again due to Native Americans claiming Alcatraz as Indian land and hoping that they would be able to create a Native American cultural center there. During the decision process, there was great public support for this, but the small Native American community could not control certain situations and much damage occurred to the grounds, and in 1971, federal marshals removed the Indians. After the removal, it was decided by Congress in 1976 that Alcatraz Island would become a part of the National Park Services, and in 1973 it was opened to the public for viewing. Alcatraz is famously known for being a prison, but the rich history it stores is quite amazing. The movies and books that have been written about the Rock does not do it any justice, and I highly recommend if you're ever in the San Francisco area to book a trip to Alcatraz because it's something that you do not want to miss